Right now, somewhere in your kitchen, there's a small white box humming quietly, keeping your leftovers from killing you. You don't think about it. You just open the door, grab the chicken, and trust it. That trust is new. That trust is maybe 3 generations old. Take that box away. Take away the salt too, the stuff you shake onto everything without a second thought. Now you're standing over a dead animal in the heat, and you have maybe 6 hours before it turns into something that can put you in the ground. No fridge. No salt. No warning label. Just your senses. And your senses are about to lie to you more than once. Go back further than you think you need to. Not hundreds of years. Try 2.5 million years, back to the first time a hominin cracked open a carcass with a stone and realized meat was calories, and calories were survival. And here's the part almost nobody sits with. For most of that time, there was no way to keep the kill. You ate fast, you ate with a group, or you buried the extra and hoped. Every single person alive today descends from someone who guessed right about which meat was still safe to eat, and whose gut didn't betray them for it. The ones who guessed wrong don't have descendants. That's the real question hanging over everything that follows. How did they turn eat it now or lose it into make it last? And how many of them died figuring out the difference between preserved and poisoned? Because the answer isn't one trick. It's a stack of them, discovered independently in different corners of the world, each one solving a problem the last one created. There are at least 5 distinct survival hacks buried in this, and each one came soaked in trial, error, and sometimes tragedy. Start with fire, because that's beat 1, and it's older than most people assume. Charred bone fragments at sites in Africa, some dated back over 1 million years, show hominins were already cooking meat before Homo sapiens even existed as a species. Cooking did 2 things nobody planned for. It killed surface bacteria, buying hours, sometimes a day, and it changed the meat structure enough that smoke could actually penetrate it. Smoking meat over a low fire wasn't invented as a preservation method first. It was almost an accident of cooking near a smoky flame for too long. Meat left hanging above embers dried out, darkened, and stopped rotting nearly as fast. Compare that to your kitchen. You press one button on a microwave and heat is instant, silent, controlled. They had to tend a fire for days, feeding it exactly enough to smoke, not enough to burn, watching meat that could still kill them if they got the timing wrong. But smoke bought days, not seasons. And seasons were the actual problem, because winter meant no fresh kill for months, and a group that couldn't stretch one bison across a cold season starved before spring. So the next beat is drying, and this one is almost unbelievably simple and almost unbelievably dangerous at the same time. Cut meat into thin strips, expose it to wind and sun, and the moisture that bacteria need to multiply disappears. This is the direct ancestor of the jerky sitting in a gas station rack near your house right now, except theirs had no ingredient list and no expiration date printed anywhere. They learned the hard way that meat dried in humid air didn't dry, it molded. That meat dried too close to campfires attracted insects that laid eggs inside the cracks. Whole batches, whole winter stores, ruined in ways they couldn't always see just by looking. You'd think a group would notice mold and just scrape it off and move on. Some did, and some of those people got violently sick because certain molds carry toxins that don't cook out and don't scrape off clean. That mistake alone likely killed people across dozens of separate cultures before anyone understood why. So, drying solved time, but it opened a new danger, because dried meat is light, brittle, easy to transport, which meant groups started carrying it further, into new climates, new humidity levels, new bacteria they had zero experience reading. And that forces the next beat, fermentation, which sounds almost backwards. Instead of stopping bacteria, some groups learned to encourage the right bacteria to outcompete the dangerous ones. Arctic populations, including ancestors of the Inuit, buried whole fish and marine mammals underground or in pits lined with grass, let them sit for weeks, sometimes months, and pulled out something that smelled like decay but was chemically stable and edible. This is the deep ancestor of foods people still eat today. Foods that outsiders call rotten and locals call correctly aged. The margin here was brutally thin. Bury it wrong, seal it wrong, let the wrong bacteria get a head start, and you've made botulism instead of dinner. There was no thermometer, no pH strip, no way to test it except memory, smell, and the accumulated deaths of everyone who got it wrong before you. Here's where you'd expect the story to slow down, an old technique refined over centuries with nothing new to shake it up. Instead, something changes the entire trajectory of preserved meat, and it isn't a better fire or a smarter fermentation pit. It's salt, and it arrives late, and it arrives unevenly. because unlike fire, salt isn't everywhere. Coastal groups could evaporate seawater. Inland groups near salt deposits, like those around ancient salt springs in Europe, could mine it. But groups without access to either had none, which meant two neighboring populations could be living completely different relationships with meat safety based purely on geography. Salt draws water out of meat through osmosis, starving bacteria of the moisture they need, and it does something drying alone can't. It works even in humid climates, where sun-drying fails completely. Suddenly, coastal and river-adjacent societies that struggled with preservation had an answer inland societies didn't have. This wasn't just survival technology. This was a resource that shaped trade routes, wars, and entire economies, because whoever controlled salt controlled how far meat, and therefore power, could travel. And that's the moment worth sitting with for a second, because it reframes something you've probably never questioned. You think of salt as flavor. To them, salt was closer to medicine, or currency, or the difference between a tribe that could stockpile food through a famine and one that couldn't. The Latin root of the word salary traces directly back to salt, because Roman soldiers were, according to long-standing historical tradition, paid partly in it. Your grocery store sells a container of it for less than a coffee. They fought over deposits of it. Now, here's the twist buried under all of this. The one that changes how you see every method already covered. None of these techniques, not fire, not drying, not fermentation, not salt, actually killed the danger completely. They only slowed it down enough to buy time, which means every single preserved meal our ancestors ate carried a live gamble. Archaeological and anthropological evidence points to certain toxins, the kind produced by Clostridium botulinum in improperly stored meat, as a very real and recurring cause of death in populations relying on preservation before germ theory existed. They didn't know what bacteria were. They didn't know why a smell meant danger, only that it sometimes did and sometimes didn't, and there was no way to be certain which time you were living through. Every strip of dried meat, every buried fish, every smoked haunch was eaten with a level of trust and tradition that we would now consider reckless. And it worked. Until it didn't. And when it didn't, entire families paid for it together, because they shared the same meal from the same batch. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little, because your body is still running the exact same background software they were running. That instinct you get when milk smells slightly off, when you hesitate over meat that looks fine but something about it feels wrong, that's not modern squeamishness. That's an inherited alarm system, tuned over millions of years by ancestors who survived specifically because they listened to it, sitting inside a body that now lives in a world with barcodes, expiration dates, and refrigeration, an environment so safe that the alarm barely ever needs to fire, and yet it still does, constantly, because it doesn't know the fridge exists. It only knows the rules its ancestors died learning. So the next time you open that white humming box and grab something without thinking twice, understand what you're actually holding. You're holding the end result of a few 100,000 years of people getting it wrong in ways that killed them, so that eventually someone got it right enough to pass it down. The convenience feels weightless because the cost was already paid a long time ago by people who never got to taste the safety they were building toward.